Hello, everyone, and welcome to the midweek program at the Raulston Arboretum. My name is Blake, and I'm the education assistant here at the Arboretum, and today we are in the staff building because we are going deeper in the garden. We've got our curator, Carey, who's going to be talking to us about why we gather seed, and in addition to Carey, we've got some of our seed collecting volunteers. We've got Mary Leonhardi and Beth Cleveland here, who will be talking with us about why we collect seeds, how we collect seeds, the process by which we do this, and that sort of thing. So it should be an informative and entertaining program. Okay, and so with the announcements out of the way, I think we can pass things over to Dennis so that we can learn a little bit about why we gather seed.
All right, hey everyone. Today we are in the staff building, which is where the seed collection, processing, and storage takes place, and we have a few show and tells in front of us and a few more that I'm going to bring up onto the table during the show today. And I have two volunteers with me who are going to tell us a little bit about seed collecting and processing. And first of all, why do we do it? Well, I want to remind everyone that our mission here at the Arboretum is to promote plants that diversify the American landscape. And so we're here to find cool plants and get them out into gardens, which we do. And when we have cool plants that have seed on them, we collect the seed and we get them out to people either directly, which we'll talk about later on, or indirectly by sharing them with other botanic gardens and kind of building a network. As a side effect, although it's not strictly our mission to do plant conservation, if we are collecting seed off of rare plants, we are also helping with plant conservation of those rare type of plants. So we have a seed collection team here. We were trying to count them up before the show started. It's like 10 people now. Size goes up and down. Two of them are here today. The two, we'll call them leaders, right? Mary's been the longtime leader, and Beth is taking on some new responsibilities lately. And they're here to kind of just show us a little bit about what the seed collection team does. I think we've got some pictures of more of the team members if Blake wants to throw them up on the screen. And we want to start with talking about where we get our seeds from and how we collect them, and then how we process them, and then what we do with them after we collect them. So we'll start at the beginning. Where do we get the idea that we need to collect a seed? Well, largely what the team does is they go around the garden and look for things that are in seed. It's really a lot of just fortune. There will be times when we'll have a specific request from myself or from Tim or from Greg or from Mark or an outside source. Hey, can you look out for seed of such and such for us? And that'll get added to their list too. And of course, if it's a plant that's out of favor or whatever, we will collect less of that or skip it that year or whatever. So we really the plants really decide for us what seeds get collected. As much as we do. We start by, the team meets once a week, every Friday for 3 hours, 9 to noon. And in those 3 hours, they do a variety of things. They will plan, they will go out and collect seeds. They will store them in here in some stage of processing or drying or fermenting. And then they will spend a little bit of time processing the seeds, getting them out of the fruit and down just to seed form where they then can store them in an envelope where we keep them for a while until we distribute them. So I guess I'm gonna go over here to Beth and she can give us a first demonstration of this euonymus. This is a really cool one. It's the one that's in the parking lot. It's one of my favorite plants here because it's got incredible fall color, but it's got these really cool fruit as well. And she's going to show you and tell you a little bit about, as an example, about this particular plant.
So this is Euonymus carnosus, and this is the overall pod fruit that's got the seed pod on the inside, as well as the seed. So we go and collect these off the tree directly, and we bring them in, and then we actually kind of start to break it apart to find where the actual seed is itself. And you can see, in here, it's kind of in this little red container, and we clean off the red portion of it. And then in general, we end up with a plate full of seeds. Once we get a plate full of these and we've finished taking these all apart, we document them as to what they actually are, where they are in the garden, any particular details like its unique tracking number, and then we package these up to store them in our seed container area and let Dennis know that we have collected these types of seeds for distribution.
Yeah, so they'll pass that information on to me. I will usually get some sort of summary after the fact that, hey, we've collected a certain amount. I put that into our database. That helps us for inventory control and helps us build our catalogs for when we're ready to distribute the seeds. We have the catalogs ready made. We collect, we also record the collection date on the seed as well as its accession number and its location. And its name. And as you can see, this one was pretty easy, I think, to clean compared to some. And we have over here, Mary in a second is going to talk to us about some of the tools of the trade that they have for some of the, and maybe some of the difficulties they have with some of the other seeds. This one, we just had to separate the one seed out of the pod and then scrape off a little bit of the fruit that was there. That was pretty easy. That was a good one. Some of them take forever. And they're in here scraping and pinching and wiping it against
getting
the
our
grape.
fingers yellow.
Yeah, getting their fingers all dirty and everything and sticky. And so they're not all that easy.
Clean.
But so thanks for that demonstration on collecting them. Why don't I go over to you and you can tell us a little bit about the tools that we're using to other than our fingers, of course, that we're using to process seeds.
Well, one of the things you need to understand is this isn't high tech, so this is something you can do at home. Strainers are a great help for getting off some of the chaff, this is my pasta strainer from home, so look around. You may have things that are very helpful if you want to do your own seed cleaning. There are also different sizes of professional strainers, which we use as well. Although
for big seed and little seed.
We don't always find the size we need there, so we go to our kitchen stock. I would like to show you a few seeds. And we here at the Raulston, of course, we always use the scientific names. So what Beth showed you was Hearts of Bursted. A lot of people you'll probably recognize it as that. This little grass seed here is pink muley grass, which is Muhlenbergia capillaris. So we only use the scientific names. We do not use common names except for to translate amongst ourselves. Another fancy tool of the trade is a rock. You can use a pretty polished rock if you want to, or you can use a just plain old rock you could go out and pick up anywhere. And how we use the rock is there are certain seeds, not all kinds of seeds, but I did this with Muhlenbergia. I put the rock in, and this is Lagostromia, which is crepe myrtle. So I shake it up with the rock, and then I dump it out into the strainer.
So the rock is like an agitator in a washing machine to break the fruit open.
Well, I'm getting a lot of chaff, but some seeds as well. So sometimes we use a couple different strainers to get at what we want. This is actually Salvia macrophylla, and a lot of the flowers these days are hybrids, so they don't always have seeds. So one of the things we do when we're collecting is we kind of feel the salvia seed's always at the base. So we kind of feel and see if there's a seed in there, because if none of them feel like they have seeds, then they're not even worth collecting because we can't propagate them. So this is the seed container, and then the black seeds are on the bottom there. And we can use a strainer to get rid of the big stuff and then just have the seeds left over. Let's see. This is another, there's a lot of different kinds of seeds that need different kinds of cleaning. This is a plant called Ikianda, and it's a lot like the lily pods, and no, I didn't do it, but to clean these, we just kind of rub it around a little bit, and the seeds fall out very easily. Lilies do a similar kind of thing, and then we'll strain the big stuff out. We, as Dennis mentioned, we record all this information, and because the Seed Seminar is actually an international program, the scientific names you don't have to speak English or Latin or any other thing because they go across the world. Every Lagerstromia in the world, people know what it is. So we have to keep very careful track of the seeds we have when we collected them, because they do have a shelf life. And as also Dennis mentioned, then once we record it on an envelope, and we have, well, do you want to show that
Yeah, I
one?
can show them. We store them in the envelopes in these cardboard boxes, kind of like a blackjack shoe. And this is for saving space, okay? If we were a much bigger operation, we would have something better than a refrigerator. We would have a humidity and temperature controlled chamber, and with airtight envelopes, and that will get you many, many, many years of storage. We can get a few years of storage with this much simpler and operation with using paper envelopes, but we get a lot more seed per unit volume, which is important to us because we will have as many as 350 different taxa at any one time when we get ready to distribute them, and we have to squeeze them all into this little refrigerator right here. And so, and Mary can show you right now where we're at near the end of the year. So we're almost at where we're our maximum for the year. And not counting the shoe that I have over here, you can see we're pretty full. We're using the doors. Those are some of the seeds that are in process. And then we've got some empty shoes down below where we'll eventually put some of those seeds into.
So when we're out in the garden, we collect in the paper bags. Again, you can do this all at home. I do. Collect them in paper bags, and paper bags are good because sometimes the berries have a lot of juice in them, and if you put them in a plastic thing right away, they'll mold, and then they may or may not be useful like that.
And we do have a photo of Mary out in the garden from this past summer. I don't know if Blake can find that collecting. But yeah, we go first into the big bags because these are easy to collect into also. Yeah. And then we transfer them. After we clean them, we store them in the little, these are called coin envelopes, by the way. There's nothing special about them. We get ours at Staples. You can buy them anywhere, and they come in several sizes. We just chose a size that's convenient for us, but they make them even bigger or even smaller depending on the volume you're dealing with.
So I would like to give a shout out to our 10 current volunteers, myself and Beth, of course, and we have Cheryl and Elaine and Jacob and Annette and Deborah and Jim and John is our newest member and Amy. And we have a great time. We learn a lot. And we're always looking for more people to join our group. So if you're interested, as Dennis mentioned, we collect both for the International Seed Seminar and also for the members distribution. So the more seed we can collect, the better, the more variety. The more seed we collect, the more likely when you request as a member, when you request your seeds, you will get your order filled because we do run out of some seeds. So we can always use your help.
Yeah, it's a real fun group. They're out here. My office is right down the hall. Friday from 9 to noon, I hear them out there all happily chittering away for three hours. They have a real good time doing it. We also have a few other special tools of the trade, and these are all things that are easy to get. You have the paintbrush, and you have some little other things for This is just a plastic picnic fork, but we need to sometimes manipulate small pieces of plant material, and we have the brushes. What other kind of cool little tools do we have?
Tweezers.
Tweezers.
We have a little snip for cutting off, like, for example, pine cones can be very sharp and prickly. So we cut them off and then we can deal with it. We don't have to try to yank it off the tree, and sometimes they don't come off so easily. So a little snippers is very useful for some of the things. Also, sometimes with columbine, for example, Aquilegia, if you pull on them, the seeds will go and just scatter into the wind. So this way we can get them into the bag so we could actually keep them. So that's just a few things. If you want to learn more, join us.
Yeah, the tools aren't too complicated. You could have a setup like this at home if you wanted, with no difficulty whatsoever. So they go out, they have a list that they work from. They find seeds, they process them and clean them. If it's a fruit, a real fleshy fruit, they do have to they get their fingers real dirty sometimes, but they have to squeeze the seeds out, and sometimes they have to soften the fruit by soaking it in water for a short period of time, a few days or a week or something. That's called fermenting, and that helps soften everything up, and then they can kind of just mush everything out, and then you have to dry it off. That's part of the process too. So let's now go into. Thanks, guys. Do we have any questions, by the way, from the audience?
Well, somebody did say that they would like to help with seed collecting. How would I apply?
Oh, yeah, perfect. So Catherine Wall is our volunteer coordinator, and so she will be the person you contact, and her contact information is on our website, and there's information about how to sign up for volunteering for any team or any purpose on our website, and your first point of contact will be Catherine. So we take the coin envelopes, they've got all the information written on them, they've gotten a certain amount of seed in them, and we put them in the refrigerator. The refrigerator is necessary because seeds are living things, they have cells in them, they are respiring, they are consuming oxygen and burning sugar just like we are, and so we have to slow that down. And we slow it down a couple of ways. Primarily is by keeping them cold. Refrigerators are generally about 45 to 37 degrees, and of course you can set them different ways, but that's a really good temperature for storing seeds. It slows down that aerobic respiration. It makes the seed live a long, long time. Keeping them, and of course when you close the door, the light does go out, I assure you it does, and keeping them in the dark also is one of the things that helps seeds slow down their respiration. We keep them dark, we keep them cool. Ideally, we would keep them in an airtight container once they were dry, so no mold. And that is so that as the oxygen slowly drops, their respiration slows even further. But we don't have that kind of space for airtight containers. And so we're using paper. So, we have one concession there to us being a small operation. But even so, the seeds can last quite a long time. I wanted to go a little bit into some plant nerd stuff for a second. There's kind of a scale of seeds from will last a huge amount of time in storage and to will not last very long in storage at all. And the terms that we use are orthodox for the last a really long time and recalcitrant for don't want to last very long in storage. Seeds can be recalcitrant because they the embryo inside does not tolerate drying down, and part of this process is desiccating the seed. It can be recalcitrant because if it's like a tropical plant, it never gets cold in the tropics. That's a seed that is ready to go as soon as it hits the ground. So there's a variety of reasons, and it's a big continuum. So there are things that might last a few hours, a few days off the plant. Some will last weeks, some will last months, and some will last years. I got a little bit of trivia. There are some two really, really old seeds that have been germinated. One of them, maybe Blake can find the links in my notes, or maybe not. There was a 2,000-year-old Jubaean date palm that was found in an archaeological site in a clay jar, and they pulled it out. It was in this jar, and they were able to germinate a 2,000-year-old seed. Wow. This was a seed that had been stored in a jar in the desert. I think it was Egypt or somewhere in the Middle East, and so presumably it was cool at times, but also presumably it was quite warm at times. And so 2,000 years old. So that's one example of a really, really long time. Even older than that, out of the permafrost in Siberia, they found some seeds embedded in it, and it had been eroded away, and they were able to germinate them. Now they didn't just stick it in a pot and it grew. They had to do some embryo rescue and stuff, but the embryo was alive in a 32,000-year-old sample of seed. And what was cool, I was down in the greenhouse today trying to pick some plants to show you guys. And this is the same genus, Silene, that the 32,000, this is not the same species, but it's just, everyone knows Silene. Let's see, Rose Campion, I believe that's Lychnus, never mind. Anyway, we have Silene we grow here is the whole point of it. And yes, catchfly. And so the very oldest living seed ever found, 32,000 years old, was a Silene. So ideally, if we were like Kew Gardens and had a perfect setup, we would desiccate these things down to 5 to 10% moisture level using desiccants, and then keep the inside of our cooler that dry as well using desiccants. Store them at 39 degrees in airtight containers. We dry them down just on a shelf, so they dry down to ambient, which is not 5 to 10%, but it's lower than it normally is, so they last longer. We're going in the right direction. And like I said, a refrigerator is 37 to 45, somewhere in there on how you set it. So we're pretty spot on with the temperature, and then the darkness, and then we don't have the airtight containers.
Can I just, one of the things I really appreciate about seeds, or the most important thing about seeds is for longevity, is the seed coat. It does the protection that Dennis was talking about, and it also helps determine when it will germinate. It has to have the right conditions, and then it will germinate. So I just have a very strong appreciation of seed coats.
Sure, yeah. So the seed coat is the very outer surface. On these seeds here that I'm pointing to, it's the black part. It is not thick at all, but it is very dense. It's like fibrous, and it has to be, it's waterproof. And many seeds, the seed will not germinate until the environment has worn away the seed coat a little bit, so that to make little cracks in it where water can get in and start that process of germination. Also, inside the embryo, there will be chemicals that are inhibitors of that embryo, keeping it from growing. And it's those temperature swings that occur during the day and night throughout the winter that break down these chemicals slowly that also has to occur and finish up before the seed will germinate as well. One other bit about longevity in seeds. One of the longest running, continuously running experiments in the world is called the Beal experiment out of Michigan State. Did you find the link for that? I have a link. It's under the word decades in my notes. So the Beal experiment started in 1800s, 1870s, I think. And this fellow who was studying, he was studying weed seeds, and he collected, 50 different species, 25 different species of weed seeds, packed them in bottles of sand and buried them, and every few years would dig up a bottle and try and germinate them. And of course, he got old and died, and so he would pass it on to his underling, who got old and died, and they passed it on to their underling. And anyway, there are still bottles. He buried enough of them that they still have some around today, and they are still digging them up every 20 years now, and they are able to germinate them even to this day. So this experiment is now closing in on 150 years old, and there are still weed seeds that just of weeds that were around Michigan, that are as soon as you expose them to light and give them a little water and off they go. So some seeds can last a really long time in storage. Yeah, they would be weeds, right? Yeah. In my yard, it's morning glory. I've never let one bloom for decades, and I still get morning glories every year from back when my yard was a farm. Okay, so there's a few. There will be a lot of questions if you're really into seeds. How do I germinate this seed? How do I germinate that seed? Are we getting questions like that into the chat?
For sure.
So I'm going to tell you right now, I can't off the top of my head answer any of them. Really, but there are some really, really good online sources of information, and hopefully I've listed them, and hopefully Blake can drop them as hyperlinks into the chat or into when he posts this on YouTube into the notes on there on how to scarify and stratify. That's manually marking the seed in such a way that you crack that seed coat so water can get in, and then overcome those germination inhibitory chemicals. Scarification and stratification are methods to do that. So there's a link, and these are all links to extension articles and things with references and stuff. There are ways you can optimize your light and temperature levels for germination, and that's going to vary widely by seedling. Some are going to like it hot. Some are going to like it cool. You don't sow kale in June. You sow it in, September, October now, right? It's a winter grower, And then there are some seed sowing references from the North Carolina Cooperative Extension, and the U.S. Forest Service has one for woody plants that's really good and detailed. And then there's this fellow named Dino. He's passed away. He was a retired professor, and in his retired years, spent many, many years writing down, figuring out the scarification and stratification rules for thousands and thousands of species of plants. And then he recorded them in this book, which he published. It was like a typewritten on a typewriter book back when it was first published in the 80s. These days, it's downloadable for free online, and I have a hyperlink there for Dino's seed germination book. Those are all good references, but actually the best thing to do is just go into Google and type, how do I germinate, and then the name of your plant. And you'll get precise recommendations for everything. Any questions that from the audience now?
Well, I would just like to add to that. We don't always know when we collect something. We don't always know exactly what the seed is. The ones we showed today were pretty obvious, but they aren't always so obvious. sometimes they're so tiny, or you don't know what's seed and what's chaff. So Googling seed image of a particular plant often is helpful, not always, but often can be helpful. So that's something you can do at home. The other thing, just a practical issue, here at the Arboretum, we keep seeds for 2 years. So there's a few things, if you're growing vegetables at home, there's a few things like onions that only last a year, but most things will last 2 years. So, that's just a practical home suggestion if you do want to collect seeds, but you don't get them planted the first year, it's okay.
From a perspective of seed collecting, there were a couple of questions about when should you collect seed? Can you collect a seed too early? And how do you determine when a seed's ready for harvest?
Great question.
Yeah, when is the seed ripe?
Yes, well, it depends on what we're talking about, but most of the time, a seed is ripe if it has a seed pod, the seed pod should be brown. And it looks like it's dead, and then you squeeze out the seeds from it.
So if it's dry and it crumbles,
Yeah.
that's a great sign that it's ready to go.
Yeah.
Or the color of a berry as you watch it change from green to yellow to orange to red.
And get soft.
Yeah, it'll get soft and it'll turn the right color. Yeah.
With if you do vegetables at home, seeds ripen after the fruit does. So for example, a cucumber, sometimes you accidentally miss a cucumber and it's all yellow, and that is when the seeds are ripe. So if you do not wait till it's ripe, the seeds depending upon the plant, often will not germinate. So you're wasting your time. So waiting, with some things you just can shake the seed pod and you can hear the seeds in it. So that means it's ready. So a few guidelines.
Yeah, and the seed that come from dry fruits are really easy to tell because they rattle around and you can just tell. With the fleshier fruits, sometimes it's hard to tell if it's ripe or not. But yeah, you use color and use softness and things like that to tell.
One other thing that I've learned over time is like these Symphyocarpos seeds are really tiny. And sometimes it's hard to know which ones are any good and which ones aren't. But this is also a good test to see if a seed is mature. If you press on it and you can feel something in there, that usually means it's got a germ and that's likely to germinate. This one just feels flat. That one's not going to germinate. So
yeah, not every seed is going to have an embryo in it or a viable embryo. So if it's a fat little seed, it probably has a nice little embryo in it.
Yeah.
If it's skinny or wrinkly and the others are all smooth, or it's miscolored and the others are all colored,
Right.
Have one color and you have one that's gray or something,
Yeah.
Off-colored ones. So yeah, and you can get rid of those right away because they'll represent like a vector for a fungus or something to get into your seed pot.
the other thing, because the Arboretum has such a wonderful collection of acers, one of the things, if you want to save acer seeds, they're pretty good usually, most of them at germinating, if they're viable. But they also are very famous for having some sort of caterpillar go through them, some sort of larva, and eat the embryo out. They aren't going to germinate. So if you see an acer or another kind of seed that has a small hole, acorns are another one, small hole in it, throw it out. It's not going to do you any good.
Yeah, and oaks are also, they're also prone to that. And the other thing about oaks is they are also one of these recalcitrant species. As soon as they dry out, they're dead. So if you have an oak, you have weeks to get it in the ground and going. So we don't usually do oaks in the Index Seminum for that reason, because they're not going to keep in our fridge for 6 months or 9 months or a year, which is generally on average what we're going to be keeping a seed for. And so, yeah, if you have oaks, you got to plant them right away and then trade the seedlings around with people. Any other questions before we move on?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because Elaine did ask a question about how do you know when a taxon needs to be moist stored, or do you collect ones that need to be moist stored?
Right. So Google and Dino
Yeah.
will have that, and Google will have that too. Yeah. And moist stratification, and that's all Dino did, is he was really working on stratification rules, and he kind of set a pattern. He would only do what was it? 30 days on, 30 days off, 30 days on, 30 days off. That's on cold stratification, then off or warm stratification. And so he would put a seed in, can I get it to germinate under one cycle, or does it take 2 cycles or 3 or 4? I don't think he was saying if it doesn't do it 30 days, can I do it in one cycle if the cycle is 60 days? I don't think he was doing it that way. But so he had a specific way of doing it. But you can find out all that kind of stuff. That's all recorded on the interweb somewhere.
Sure. And you mentioned that we write down the name and the date. Do we go so far as to document the habit and soil condition or any of that? Is any of that
No.
necessary for when we share
Not
with
for
folks?
Not the way we do it. So we're small. We're a small organization here, and we are collecting seeds strictly from within the garden. Other places that collect seed, they are doing wild collections out in the wild. And so, yes, they will record, and for their wild collections, other things about what is around that, the environmental area around the plant, the other species that are growing near the plant, the altitude, the latitude, the longitude, all kinds of things for wild collected plants. And that is partly for like conservation reasons. They want to make sure they're getting the genes that exist in this area and not in this area and things like that. We don't go to that level because we are not doing this for conservation. We're doing this for dissemination. And so we are collecting just from the garden and just putting them out there quick.
And we did mention this before, but someone asked if you could comment on storing seeds in paper envelopes versus in plastic bags.
Sure. So as Mary mentioned earlier, plastic bags, if you put the seeds in and they're too wet, you're going to get some mold growing in there, and you don't want that. If you're going to use plastic bags, you maybe wrap the seeds in a little bit of paper towel or something to absorb any extra moisture. But you do want the seeds to be dried down before they go in their storage bag.
Okay.
And you don't want to store them moist at all.
And so when you clean a berry off of a seed, even though you may think it's pretty dry, we let it sit out for at least a week to make sure.
Sure.
Yeah, and you can also, if like places like Kew Gardens or UNC Botanic Garden, they will use desiccants, and that silicone stuff you find in every electronic device you buy or a pill bottle you buy. They use desiccants to suck the moisture out as well.
Sure.
And if you want to pan over to the top of that file cabinet, that's kind of where we set seeds over to the side to let them dry.
Yeah, that's part of the process here is
Yeah.
to dry them for a short period of time
Yep.
before they put them into the envelope, into storage.
Carolyn's asking about the desiccant packs, the ones that just come with your random bought products. Can you just reuse those?
The
I suppose so, if they
silicone.
haven't already sucked in too much humidity from the environment they're in. I would imagine so. You can buy bags of the desiccant though on Amazon, I suppose. We have a little bit of it around that we keep around when someone asks us to mail them seeds, fresh off the plant. Hurry up and get them to us. We will, or leaf samples or whatever. We will put some desiccant in there too. It's something you can buy. It's not terribly expensive as far as I know.
Sure. But any moisture would be the enemy. Any moisture you're just asking for.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we've gone over the process of collecting the seed and storing them. Now let's talk about what we do with the seeds. I'll have a little bit of show and tell. So some of the seeds get directed into our own greenhouses. Sophia will take them and sprout them so that we can use them for our own purposes. Either we want more for the garden, or we want plants that we want to give to somebody. We don't want to give them seeds, we want to give them plants. We want to make sure it's true to type. We have so many plants growing close together that cross-pollination is a real possibility. And so if we want to make sure we have a purebred instead of a crossed plant, we will sprout them. And these are just some ones I grabbed from the greenhouse today. This is a rhododendron. These are some of those dwarf pine trees that we have. These are seedlings off of it. It occasionally produces seeds, and we will grow them out and see if they are also dwarf. This is that Silene that I mentioned, is a cousin of the one that's 32,000 years old. Here are some ericemas and some lilies. What we do is we put a whole bunch of seed in one pot. We don't get those seed trays with its one seed per cell. We do a bunch of seed in a pot, and then whatever, let's say a whole bunch of them come up. This helps save a lot of space. We wouldn't have nearly the amount of space to do it the other way. And so we wait till we have a bunch of them that have sprouted, and then we will kind of gently dump this out and gently tease apart the plants and pot them up individually at that point. But then we will put this back together and put it back in the greenhouse. Perhaps there's still more seed that are going to germinate. When you do it the way we do it, we don't stratify in the fridge or scarify either. We put all our seeds in the pots and then put the pots outside to scarify and stratify with nature, just like they would in nature. It's just a way, it takes a lot longer, but it's space efficient and it's resource efficient to do it that way. And so often the seeds don't all come up at once because of that. So you pull out the ones as they come up, you put it back and you wait. And after a couple of years, if none have come up, then we finally give up on it. But we will give a seed pot a couple of years to make sure that it has scarified and stratified and broken dormancy. And also some plants don't actually put up a top in year one. They'll germinate and they'll put a root down in year one, and you still don't think they're active. And then year two, you get a top on them. And so that's kind of how we do it here at the Arboretum. All right, so that's some show and tell. And so what are we doing with these seeds? We want to distribute them. We're either going to grow them out for our purposes, we want to plant for us, or we want to plant to give to someone. But the two main reasons are our Index Seminum and our member seed distribution. That's just a word we use, a term we use internally. It's really our member Index Seminum. Index Seminum is a Latin term. Index means catalog. Seminum means seed, so it's a seed catalog. Index semina as a thing have been going on since the 1800s. I looked a little trivia up. The very first published Index Seminum is 1800 by the Botanic Garden of Madrid. And prior to that, there were other gardens that would publish seed lists. And I do have some hyperlinks in the notes that Blake might put in the chat that will take you to these very old photocopied documents that are in all Latin of these Index Semina, of these really, really old ones. These days, Index Semina, they used to be bound books and mailed around to people. And then later on, you would get them as basically a seed catalog, not much different than your Burpees catalog. But the gardens that were producing them were putting in a lot of effort just to do the production of the catalog itself. And with technology, that's gotten simpler and simpler and simpler. So these days, we often will just get a PDF or actually just a hyperlink to an online order form is what we get these days. I've included in ours, if Blake can find the link and pop it into the chat, what our Index Seminum looked like this past year. And it was just a Google Docs sheet that you would go to, kind of like if y'all have signed up for picking up your plants here, Sign Up Genius. It looks like that. You get a link, you click on it, you click a few check boxes, and you hit submit, and then we get the order. So our Index Seminum has been growing quite a bit lately. I'm not exactly sure when we started it. I've been here 4 years, and we've been doing it at least a couple of years before then, maybe even longer. Do you happen to know? Mary's been volunteering here for a lot longer than I've worked here. But in 2023, when we were in January, we did our 2022 Index Seminum. We had 311 different taxa to offer, different types of seeds, different types of plants. And we do this in conjunction, by the way. We don't do this alone. We do this in conjunction with Juniper Level Botanic Garden, which is our sister institution down kind of south of Garner. And so they contribute some seeds and we contribute some seeds, and we put out this joint Index Seminum. And then when the orders come in, they send some folks over here, and we have a big pizza party where we pack seeds and eat pizza and mail them all out. So in January 2023, we had 311 taxa. I sent out email invitations to over 600 botanic gardens. I've been building my list year over year since I started. I'm trying to grow it every year. 600, there are about 3,000 to 3,500 botanic gardens in the world. So at 600 invitations, I've got a pretty good start on it. Of course, room for improvement, right? From those 600 invitations, we received 117 orders. So pretty good response from botanic gardens in 28 countries, and it was 20-something states, 26 states or something like that in the United States. So pretty good coverage. There's still areas of the world I'd like to crack. We don't have right now a lot of back and forth with botanic gardens, Index Seminum-wise, in Asia, South America, and the parts of Africa that share our climate. So South Africa and like the Atlas Mountains in extreme North Africa. I'd like to get some trade back and forth with those guys. Also Northeast Mexico. There's some, the mountains there, Tamaulipas region. That'd be great. They have some gardens there. That'd be nice to make some contacts there too. So we got our 117 orders. We distributed, we assembled and then mailed more than 1,900 seed packets to those 117 people. That was one of those packing days that I had you guys come out for. And so that was a fun day. We did that all in just a few hours, actually. And there's a couple, I've written about this Index Seminum a few times in the e-update. So Blake, I shared with him some links to some of those articles if you want to read those. That's the main reason we collect seed, is for the Index Seminum, which is about distributing seeds and collecting seeds. We also order seed from other gardens that have Index Semina, and I've been growing that too. And this past year, it was well over 1,000 taxa that we got from. It was somewhere between 50 and 100 different gardens. I'm not exactly sure where. I have another show and tell when we receive them. So this one here is from France, and this one here is from Bulgaria. Europe is really big into Index Semina, and so most of our Index Semina that we order from, and that the ones that buy that are order from us from outside of the U.S. are from Europe. They have a huge number of botanic gardens. And they're the oldest botanic gardens. They started doing botanic gardens in the 1500s. And so they have the most mature network. And so they're real big into trading seeds back and forth. So what we started a couple of years ago, at the end of the Index Seminum, we still had seed left over. And if a seed gets too old, remember, we don't have the ideal storage situation. So we toss the seed after 2 years. So we still had seed left over. We're like, well, let's do something for the members. And so if you're a member, we hold a whole nother Index Seminum but we don't call it that because it's Latin. We just call it the member seed distribution. And we put out another Google Docs sheet that you can make your order off of. And we've done it 2 years now, and it's been one of our biggest events other than Moonlight as far as number of people that participate in it. We had 608 orders this year. That's this year in February of this year for we'll call it the 2022 member seed distribution from 13 different states and a member in Belgium. So we had one overseas too. And we sent out the email invitation. We have over 4,000 members now. So the email went out to 4,000 people, 600 of which decided to place an order with us. And we had a second seed packing day and a second pizza party. And there we packed 2,700 packets of seed to mail them out. That was, we didn't finish in that day. We had to do some homework afterwards to do that. So we're distributing the seeds via the Index Seminum, the member seed distribution, and then we're growing a few for our own use. And that is why we have a seed collection team. Before I go on, any questions from the audience?
Not too many questions left over. We are running a little bit short on time. So if there's anything you need to hit, let's hit it. But first off, we did have somebody ask a question. They say they keep their seeds in the freezer. Is that bad?
Not necessarily. Well, they're dried down enough that the freezing them won't necessarily cause ice crystals to rupture the cells, but that's the danger. It's better to keep them in the fridge. That's a better temperature range.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how I'm going to answer that one.
Good.
All right.
Good answer.
And any others? I just have some closing notes.
Just hit us with your closing notes.
Closing notes. Okay, so hopefully you guys out there in TV land have been saying, I want to get involved with seeds somehow. And how do I do that? There's several ways you can do it. You can become a member. So you can, if you're a member, you can participate in the member seed distribution. You can become a volunteer and work with the volunteer collection, the seed collection team. It's a great team. We also do have occasionally classes that we offer here on plant propagation. Sometimes they have a seed component to them. We don't have any that I could see coming up. Usually it's like Bree or Bryce or Tim doing those, or Sophia sometimes. But we do, I know Bree has a class coming up in December about cottage gardening, and I think it did mention something about using some seed in there.
For sure, yes.
Yeah.
And that class is presently sold out, but you are welcome to sign up for the wait list.
So give it a shot. You never know. We do also occasionally give away some of our seedlings, and we do auction off or sell some of our seedlings as well. And I have hyperlinks for both of those that give all the details about our giveaways and our auctions and sales. And that includes the plant buggy for those of you who are familiar with the plant buggy. And so there's 2 hyperlinks there that Blake can put into the chat about that. And also, if you attend our Friends of the Arboretum lectures or some of our other events like this Gardening in the South Symposium, we also frequently have door prizes where we will give away a plant. And those are sometimes babies from seed that we've collected in the garden. And we just had too many of them and we want to distribute them. That was about all I had. Are there any questions? Any final comments from you guys?
No?
No? Did we get it all?
I think we got it all.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Good.
This was awesome. Thank you so much, Dennis, for pulling all of this together. Thank you so much, Mary and Beth, for joining us on the midweek program and sharing your expertise with us, and hopefully enticing some more people out there to come and join the good old seed team.
And join us on Friday.
Absolutely, yeah. We do have a good time with all the stuff we do out here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for the midweek program today. We will not be back next week because it's Thanksgiving. We're just too grateful to be doing the midweek program that day. But we will be back the following Wednesday at 3 o'clock, and that will be the 5th Wednesday in November. So we will be having us a good old-fashioned horticulture hour. So make sure you join us on that day and bring your questions, because we will have answers, hopefully. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see y'all next time. Y'all take care.